So kicking things off with our season recaps is the team that won it all by being the absolute worst of the worst in Dumpster Town. We're going to Dumpster Town first. And we begin with the head residents of Dumpster Town for the second straight year, the Jacksonville Jaguars, who are sponsored by All Elite Wrestling. Oh, man. When you look at the Jaguars in their last 2 seasons, they're pretty goddamn awful. They were pretty damn awful. When you look at their 2020, the year prior, they won their first game. You know, they beat Phillip Rivers in the Indianapolis Colts in their first game. But then they went on to win by losing the rest of their games. They went 1-15, got the first overall pick in the 2021 NFL draft. And then when you reach towards the end of the season, they fired their head coach, Doug Marrone, who surprisingly was still there by that point. And then mid-season, general manager David Caldwell was gone too. So both of them overall provided, some pretty bad results, especially when it came to drafting players. And then even though they drafted a few good players, they couldn't really develop them. They really put them in some shitty situations. And then last year, when you get to January of last year, they hire Urban Meyer. And you think, okay, maybe this might be a good hire for Jacksonville. Maybe this could be the thing that turns them around. You get a former college football head coach, known for his time in Ohio State, who won a national championship in 2014, and maybe could turn this thing around. And like not every college head coach has had success, being a successful head coach in the NFL. And then the Jaguars went ass backwards as well. They decided to promote director of player personnel, and Niners fans know him very well. Former general manager of the 49ers, Trent Baalke, to be the permanent general manager. From the very beginning, oh man, you knew this was going to be very bad for Jacksonville. You know this was going to be an all elite shit show. And from the very start, it was. It kind of was going to begin that way. Once Urban Meyer stepped into the building, you knew that wave of controversy was going to begin. When he assembled the staff together, he hired a former Iowa State strength and conditioning coach, Chris Doyle, to be the team strength and conditioning coach. But then a day later, he resigned because there were allegations of racism and player bullying. And once word got out of that and the immediate fan backlash went out, he resigned. And then a couple months later, they signed Tim Tebow, who wanted to make a comeback in the NFL and who wanted to play tight end, even though he never played the position whatsoever. So, yikes. What a shit show it was going to be. So nonetheless, the Jaguars proceed forward in trying to rebuild their team around a new quarterback in mind. I mean, as expected, it was going to be Trevor Lawrence, who they picked number 1 overall. And then in that draft, they would address some more pressing concerns like getting an offensive tackle and getting a corner. And then in free agency a month earlier, they had the most cap space available, but they didn't really do much with it for whatever reason. They added Marvin Jones in free agency, but he's an aging piece. And they did try to address the corner position, but it didn't really produce many results. Like they got corner Shaquille Griffin and safety Rayshon Jenkins, both of whom weren't really stout talent for the Jaguars in 2021. So by the start of the season, the Jaguars, they still possessed a rebuilding team. You'd think in mind that there'd be some hope of progress in 2021 and things would be, a little bit better than 2020. But then you get to the season. Oh man. Sure. They went, they slightly improved on the record. They went 3-14. But man, behind that record you see once you see behind that record, everything just went completely wrong. Things honestly felt completely worse than the previous year. They start the season 0-5. Trevor Lawrence looked nothing like the QB most were accustomed to in Clemson. Trevor Lawrence overall had a pretty bad year. He only picked things up in pretty much the last couple of games. But then again, when you look at it from a team perspective, Trevor Lawrence wasn't developing well because Urban Meyer was pretty much micromanaging everything, and then Trevor Lawrence didn't really have much of a supporting cast. But then Lawrence also had his own struggles too. So they managed to beat the Miami Dolphins in London. So they snapped a 15-game losing streak, and they also managed to upset the Buffalo Bills in Jacksonville. You know, the Josh Allenception game. But even then, they won 2 games by that point, and they weren't really progressing much. They weren't making any positive, vibes in the rebuild, and it mostly is because of Urban Meyer, who is just casually on for the ride. And by December, his season was about to come to a crashing halt because he was getting into some weird shit. He was getting into some elite shit, I guess you could per se. And by December, he got fired. Yes, he got fired. And why did he get fired? Well, it all began when the Jaguars lost to the Cincinnati Bengals in Week 5. Rather than flying back to with this team, and try to cheer them up, try to give them some positive advice on how to recover from another loss, he went to his Columbus restaurant to party and, touch a woman. Yeah, what does that tell you? So he also benched one of the best players of that year, James Robinson, their running back, during blowout losses to the Seahawks and the Rams. And he tried to hide behind that, claiming that it was injury related, especially during the Rams game. When, I get it that you want to not injure your players, but damn, it's like you want to get them as much experience as much playing time as possible. And like I said, December was pretty much the tipping point. There were reports about players and coaches finally being fed up of Meyer's treatment because Urban Meyer was trying to treat it like the players were his college students and his college coaches, or the NFL coaches, were his college coaches, because you hear reports about Meyer treating them like students rather than men, and coaches being called losers. Marvin Jones even got into a heated argument, and then Josh Lambo came out and said that Urban Meyer kicked him in the leg during the preseason practice. And Urban Meyer, his response was that allegedly, when Josh Lambo told him not to kick him in the leg, he told him that, fuck you, I'll kick you whenever I want. And that was the last straw for owner Shahid Khan to fire his ass, to show him the door in December. I'm kind of surprised, I guess. I don't know if I'm surprised, but I'm a little surprised that, there weren't reports of, Urban Meyer, doing some weird things with Tony Khan and the elite in AEW. I wonder why Shahid Khan didn't fire him over that. So anyway, the rest of the year, I guess it didn't really go so well for the Jaguars. So Darrell Bevell, their offensive coordinator, replaces Urban Meyer for the rest of the games. But I guess on a more positive note, they managed to upset the Indianapolis Colts in the final game of the regular season. Trevor Lawrence finally had a good game. The rest of the team also had a good team effort, shutting down Jonathan Taylor and getting to Carson Wentz, who pretty much had a terrible game himself. And they eliminated the Colts from playoff contention. So you can at least say, for as stupid as the Urban Meyer signing was, at least Shahid Khan decided to cut bait before things got even worse, I guess. But still, his dumbass decided to keep Trent Baalke, and the fans, in the final game of the season, they responded in kind, and rightfully so. They showed up in the season finale in clown costumes. Yes, that is the entire embodiment of the Jaguar season. It was a clown show. So overall, the Jaguars, still the worst team in the NFL by any stretch of the imagination. But I guess if you had a few positives for this very disastrous Jaguar season, Trevor Lawrence, I will give him this. He's a clear team leader. You can tell with his calm, humble demeanor. He clearly speaks not just for himself, but the entire team. He tries to like pinpoint issues as a team problem. So Trevor Lawrence, clearly a team leader. They also had some good production from their rookies, such as Tyson Campbell, the corner, and a receiver like Laquan Treadwell and James Robinson. And as I mentioned before, the upset wins over the Buffalo Bills and the Indianapolis Colts throughout the season. But still, they're 3-14, and they went through a very, very controversial season. And even though they have the number 1 overall pick, they're still in pretty rough shape mentally. But I mean, going into this offseason, going into free agency in a couple weeks, they still have the second most money to spend at $59 million. And they did hire Doug Peterson as their head coach. With Doug Peterson, he's a former Super Bowl winning head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles. I mean, yes, his tenure did end in a little bit of controversy with him and Carson Wentz. But, Peterson has proven that he can develop young quarterbacks, as with the case with Carson Wentz in his near MVP season before he tore his ACL and that drastically affected his career. And again, he led the Eagles to a Super Bowl title with Nick Foles before he became F-I-A-L-S, Nick Fails, filling in for Carson Wentz. So I think Trevor Lawrence, if he gets the proper supporting cast around him, he could benefit eventually with Peterson as his coach. So going to the offseason, Jaguars are still going to be a shitty team in 2022, but what they need to do in this offseason, be it free agency and the draft, is that they got to get a supporting cast for Trevor Lawrence. The biggest priority is the offensive line, because that offensive line was not giving Trevor Lawrence time to throw. Trevor Lawrence had to run in the pocket, or he was taking a lot of hits and sacks in the regular season. You also have to get Trevor Lawrence a top veteran receiver in free agency. I don't know who that is. They're probably not luring someone like Devontae Adams into Jacksonville. He's not getting into that all elite shit show. They also have to decide what to do with the number 1 overall pick. They can go for an offensive lineman at number 1, but they have to assure that whichever offensive lineman that is, it's the right one for them. That screams, this is the guy that can protect Trevor Lawrence in 2022. That's ready to start in that front. I mean, they can also trade it away, but then again, it's I don't know if it's whatever they want to do. So for the Jaguars, they're not going to be competitors. They're not going to be competitors, like probably not next year, not even in 2023. But even if Trent Baalke is running the show, like for as stupid as he is, if he somehow makes all these somewhat right moves and does decently in the draft, the Jaguars, in a couple of years, they may shed themselves from what this year was, an all elite shit show in 2021. They can, because this year, this 2021 season was an all elite shit show. They had Urban Meyer as head coach, and he went on to do this crazy things that was just a bullying point for even Shahid Khan. Shahid Khan found out the hard way, and he got Doug Peterson, I guess. So he rectified that. So overall, the Jaguars are not going anywhere in 2022, but I guess there's nowhere to go but